The Theater Arts program was first offered in 2015 in response to the growing theater industry in the Philippines. What we did with the program is we divided it into 2 tracks so students can choose between the performance and the production track. Our students stand out because the program seeks to capitalize on the growth of the industry. So we give our students in-depth training in histories, in theories, and also in practice. Anybody who is interested and who is very much willing to learn about production and performance can definitely enroll in Benilde's Theater Arts program. Because we, as their faculty, we're also very much willing to teach them. The Theater Arts program fosters innovation through diverse inclusion. By being inclusive, we support and respect differences. This can actually be reflected in the quality of education, the environment, and the work that we produce. Our faculty are industry practitioners and leaders who are trailblazers in the academic field. The Theater Arts program creates a great environment conducive to learning and fostering creativity and technical innovation because we offer the students with the most current and advanced facilities.
I've been a theater professional for more than 15 years. I have a master's degree. I am a senior artist teacher of the Philippine Educational Theater Association, or PETA. I'm also an associate festival director of the Fringe Manila International Festival, particularly in charge of the program for Fringe University. I've trained with PETA, Tanghalang Pilipino, UP. I've trained with Stella Adler Studio of Acting and Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts as well. I teach introductory subjects in the practice of theater. I also teach theater history and theater readings, particularly those of theories, and also that of acting. Teaching is a way for me to contribute positively to the industry, to produce future theater professionals who will continuously explore possibilities and raise the standards of the industry, especially here in the Philippines. But more importantly, I teach to share the belief that theater is more than just a form of entertainment. It can bridge gaps and unify communities. It can resolve conflict. It can be a tool to effect positive social change. We welcome individuals who have the desire or passion, who would like to explore ways on how to tell stories differently, whether they want to create them, perform them, or simply make it happen. In the Theater Arts program, we don't just teach our students. We guide them in the start of their journey to discover themselves and discover their potentials, discover their capacities to create, and more importantly, believe that they can make things happen for themselves, for their communities, for Filipinos, and hopefully for the world. Musta is a multisensory, experiential journey that takes the audience through immersive spaces that unravels the inner workings of depression and mental health difficulties.
To me, I find it very brave and encouraging because an issue about mental health is very relevant. It's a conversation right now, and it gives the information out there that something is happening and there's something we can do about it.
The goal of the production is to encourage greater awareness about depression and about mental health. But it's actually more than just awareness. By putting the contraction of the Filipino word kamusta, how are you, or musta, as a title, it intends to interrogate the kind of relationships that we form within our communities, within our societies.
When it comes to technical and the creative process, it was actually really fun and of course busy because we had a lot of installations, but we also got challenging part of the technical and designing of the production itself. Is we actually used recycled bottles, the garbage bags and all that.
A lot about this production that's very new and very uncommon about any production that involves story, because it requires the audience to participate willingly and with a sense that they can choose how quickly they want to go through the story or how deeply they want to be involved in the story.
I feel great. I feel very, as a Benilde student, I feel very honored to be part of an event such as this, because it really provides us a training ground for our education. In here, we really learn by doing, and that's the beauty that Benilde does.
So I'm actually grateful for having this kind of events because I'm able to portray my abilities as an arts manager. I'm able to communicate and connect with people, not only communicate with people but also be able to know more about the production itself. You get to involved in the production and it's really great.
Musta tells a story about depression, but it's more than just that. We want people to be aware of themselves. We want people to be aware of other people, be mindful of their experiences so that they will have an idea on how to live life each and every single moment of it. This performing arts workshop is a collaboration between Asrama Butitin, LaSalle Brothers House, and the Office of Lasallian Missions in collaboration with the Benilde Arts and Culture Cluster. This is our second year doing this project in this beautiful and loving community, Asrama Butitin.
We saw how much the students learned from our last year's workshop and have proposed again for us to be able to come back this year, 2017. So this year, we are a much more bigger group, and the involvement of faculty from Theater Arts Design Foundation, dance, music, and production design programs. We also have students from the Theater Arts program and alumni from the Technical Theater and Production Design programs.
We came back to Malaysia because we miss the people, the culture, and the food. This is our second time going in Malaysia and seeing these kids again made us nostalgic about the first time we went here. We saw the same kids again and there are a bunch of new ones who we had no troubles in getting to know and getting too close to.
After tapping into their expressive potentials last year, this time it's all about enhancing their capacities to create stories drawn from their community that is right for their culture and tradition.
This year, the culminating activity is the integration of the 5 workshops about the legend of Mount Kinabalu. Students from De La Salle Butitin will choreograph, work on their own lines, create the set pieces and costumes, and compose their own music for their final output.
Activity ini dapat berlaku bersama rekan-rekan saya. Walaupun mencoba, karena ini dapat memberikan saya banyak kebaikan. Tanpa kerjasama, diri saya tidak akan dapat membuat satu aktiviti. Bekerjasama dalam kumpulan amatlah penting, karena tanpa kerjasama kita tidak akan berjaya dalam sesuatu aktiviti.
Importante sa akin itong journey na to kasi I get to meet new people with new culture, with new lifestyle na ibang-iba from Manila na I think will help me get more ideas for my course and for the program I chose. I think it's very important to have these kinds of workshop. Tulad nga na sinasabi ng aming consultant at ng aming mga professor, always share. And sharing is the most important thing in life kasi you develop social relationship.
Pengalaman saya dengan Bernard dan rekan-rekan ialah dalam melukis apa saja yang sukar. Secara keseluruhannya yang saya boleh katakan mengenal kerjasama ini bersama dengan Bernard dan ialah dapat mengenali bangsa Murut dan bangsa Tagalog.
Well, I want them to learn lifelong skills, especially in understanding the world visually. I want them to learn rudimentary drawing skills, and I also like the collaboration between our workshop and the other workshops in creating the production. I think the workshops here in Butitin pushes our school's vision of innovation and inclusion to a really different level as we are going out of the boundaries of our own country and exploring collaborations with other cultures.
I think it is very much in line with Benilde's mandate to be inclusive in that we don't just extend our reach within our borders, but we cross seas, mountains, oceans to share what we know and what we love.
It has always been embedded in me to give service to our community and fellow Lasallian brothers and sisters. I hope that this cycle of serving the community and our fellow Lasallian brothers and sisters will last ever.
Before we begin today's webinar episode, we invite you to join us in prayer and afterwards in the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Let me be the change I want to see. To do with strength and wisdom all that needs to be done, and become the hope that I can be. Set me free from my fears and hesitations. Grant me courage and humility. Give me the spirit to face the challenge and start the change I long to see. Today I start the change I want to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark in faith, service and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in me. Today I start the change I want to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark and faith. Service and communion, let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins here in me. Live Jesus in our hearts forever.
Mayang magiliw, pala sa silangan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lumang hinirang, duyan na ng magiging, sa manlulupig, di ka masisi. Sa dagat at mundong sasimuy at sa langit mamahal, may nilagang tulad, awit sa panlayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdidinig. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng buwan, ating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya ng may mga mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Hello, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be with you today for what I feel is going to be a wonderful beginning of a series of valuable sessions. I'm Eric Villanueva de la Cruz from Benilde's Theater Arts program, and I will be your moderator for this session. We thank you for joining us today and spending your time to learn and share your thoughts with us. I'm joining this session from Mandaluyong City, and I would like to invite you to say hello and tell us where you are joining us from by typing on the Facebook comment box. All right. Right now, we continue to navigate this unprecedented time, and so far, only thing certain is the uncertainty of our situation. And as we transition into the new realities brought about by the pandemic, more than ever, artists are needed to imagine, realize, and manifest new visions for the future. And so we designed this webinar series for you. Artists, students, enthusiasts, or anyone who might find our sessions helpful and encouraging during this difficult period, whatever stage of coping or recovery you might find yourselves in. The more important thing is that we be together. Oh, and that's the title of our webinar series, Be Together. And to tell us more about the project, I would like to introduce the Associate Dean of Benilde's Art and Culture Cluster, Ms. Magdalena De Leon.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the webinar series, Be Together. Organized by the Theater Arts Program under the Arts and Culture Cluster in the School of Design and Arts of De La Salle College of St. Benilde. This webinar series is the first offering of Benilde Theater Series, or BTS, an interdisciplinary platform for practitioners, educators, and researchers both locally and internationally to share their significant experiences and studies in the field related to theater and the performing arts. In its first season, Be Together brings together a community of Benildians, friends, and partners in the field of theater and related disciplines in the spirit of mutual goodwill and cooperation. It also aims for the exchange of significant experiences and learnings in responding to the current crisis and provide an opportunity to discuss and listen to valuable insights and strategies in shaping a meaningful future for the industry. This webinar series is entirely online, free, and open to the public as part of Benilde's fundraising collaboration with De La Salle Philippines Kada Uno on the project BARKada Uno, Benilde Artists Rising, #Bangon Artista, an online fundraising event that seeks to assist the most vulnerable members of the arts and culture sectors. So please donate what you can. We appreciate all your help. And with that, we look forward to seeing you in all of our succeeding events, and we hope that you will find the Be Together webinars helpful and engaging. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you very much, AD Magda. And to add a bit more information about the webinar series, it is divided into 3 strands. To get here, which facilitates reflections, learning points, and realizations on current mobility and platform restrictions. To get there, which examines new strategies and approaches in producing and creating productions geared towards sustainability and promotion of our practice. And lastly, we have Together, which looks into viable ways and means to help the performing arts community during the pandemic. We acknowledge that screen fatigue is real, so we encourage you to go see the webinar sessions that you feel might be useful to you and that you'll help us share the word, especially to people and groups who could benefit from our sessions. So, just quickly before I hand it over to our speakers, a few housekeeping rules. During the session, we invite you to engage with each other on the comment section of this Facebook live stream. Please feel free to contribute your thoughts and ideas, or maybe even share a link or an example relating to the topic to enrich the discussion for everyone. Also, if you have questions for our speakers, please send it through the comments. We have a wonderful team managing your comments, and we will try to get through as many questions as we can during the Q&A, especially after our speaker's presentation. More importantly, we invite you to share your thoughts to help us improve this webinar series by completing a quick survey, which will be posted occasionally in the Facebook comment section of this live stream. We are open to suggestions for future webinar topics that might interest you. And lastly, a recording of our session will be made available on our YouTube channel in the coming weeks. So please check back on this Facebook page in the coming days for the announcement. And also, more importantly, so that you will be updated to the upcoming sessions that we will have in April. While you're here, might as well like and share our page. All right, and that's about it. Let's now go to our first webinar episode, Behind the Interactive Digital Theater Productions, The Boarding House, and Lying Creatures. I am very excited to introduce our speakers who will share with us their experience and creative processes in making these interactive theater productions online. Our first guest is a student of Benilde Theater Arts Program in the production track. She's currently the resident stage manager for Teatro 77 and occasionally handles the production design department. We have with us Ms. Samantha Campos.
Hi everyone.
Hi Sam.
Hi.
Okay, our next guest is a student of the acting track in Benilde's Theater Arts Program. For Teatro 77, she's an actor and the head of media and design for marketing. Please welcome Miss Phoebe Luis.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Phoebe. Okay, next up, we have a graduating student of theater arts in Benilde. She is an actress, writer, model, host, and radio DJ for networks such as ABS-CBN, Cosmopolitan Philippines, and Monster RX 93.1. Currently, she's calling us from her hometown all the way from Canada, Miss Isabella Peterson. Hello, Bella.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hi. And last but definitely not the least, we have another graduating student. She is in the production track of the program, and she usually works as a production manager and handles the lighting design and web show programming for Teatro 77. Please welcome Miss Kyla Ravago.
Hi,
Kyla.
everyone. Woo.
Guys, I am so thrilled to have you here with us. And of course, thank you so much for making time to share your practice with our audience. I know this is a very busy time for you because you will be premiering your thesis production tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes.
Right, so I'm sure you're going to tell us more about it. So, guys, I'm going to hand it over to you. Girls, take it away.
Thanks, sir. Let's go.
So, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I'm Isabella. We have Phoebe, Samantha, and Kyla, and together we are the active members of Teatro 77. So, a little bit about our group. So once again, Samantha, Phoebe, myself, Isabella, and Kyla Ravago. So a little bit about our group, Teatro 77. So yes, Teatro 77, we are the production house of Batch 117 of Theater Arts in De La Salle College of St. Benilde. So we are international and local artists, and our team dreams of creating quirky and innovative theatrical experiences that can push the potential of Philippine theater. For ourselves, we started out as theater students, just theater students in Benilde, and now the network is slowly growing to include students from other courses within Benilde and outside of the college. So about Teatro 77 and our vision for our company, our dream is to capture the reality of the human experience through timeless and quirky productions that can inspire, empower, and educate. Or to put it in another way, our work is play. So to talk about the very first production that Teatro 77 created within Benilde, I'll pass it over to Sam.
Hi everyone. Yes, our first ever production that we produced as Teatro 77 was Cadaver. It was written by Alberto Florentino and directed by Kyle Confessor. So this production, in this production, we featured music from Calix, a music group from here in the Philippines. So in Cadaver, like there, what it says in the slide, it's a start of something new for us. It was what started us as a batch, like in terms of how we wanted to be different, and it also paved the way of our marketing side as Teatro 77. So production is Kung Paano Maghiwalay. This was what we call the one that got away. So Kung Paano Maghiwalay. The text is written by De Jesus III, and it was to be directed by our moderator, Sir Eric Villanueva de la Cruz. So Kung Paano Maghiwalay, or KPM, was probably the most promising show we're going to produce. It was inclusive in terms of how it promotes all kinds of love, and it's socially relevant in that for this production we raised funds for education for PWDs and we supported Sagip Kapamilya as well. So yun, we had show beneficiaries, like I said, Sagip Kapamilya, and also a Child's Dream Foundation. And in this production, we were also going to we were supposed to have also guest actors, namely Sherry Lara and Alex Agkawili. So yes, it was 2 weeks before our opening show until our Chancellor Robert L. Tang announced the suspension of classes. And so with that, we were already thinking postponing the show. But then it came to the point where we were not able to push through with the production due to the lockdown and the pandemic. So with that, we had to officially cancel the show for everyone's safety, of course. And so uh, we had to email all media partners, our sponsors, our VIPs, and etc. We also had to email all our ticket buyers, of course, individually, and reimburse them for the tickets they already purchased. And actually, we have here as well in the audience with us um, two of our cast, three of our cast.
Oh no.
No.
The suspense.
Suspense. Here in the audience, we actually have three of our cast members from KPM. We have Arj, Johnji, and Guy in the audience. Hi, guys. Thank you for being here.
Okay, I think I'll take it from here.
Working
So,
from home, huh?
Yeah, working from home. This whole issue that led us to this whole setup, Theater 77. In the face of the pandemic, really, what we really asked ourselves was, so what now? I think this is a question that, because yeah, we had that show, we had to cancel it, initially postponed, but then eventually canceled it. And then, so then the whole future of what we would be doing, it's kind of daunting. Parang, okay, probably kind of lost then. So, but Theater 77's never been a group to shy away from a challenge. In fact, as a group, we're pretty ambitious. We love pushing ourselves to go further and do more. So with this ambition and drive, we've asked ourselves what we could do now in this pandemic. I mean, theater has hit a virtual standstill, not just locally, but worldwide. And so it's an entirely new platform. But if you think about it, it's not a new medium. It's still theater as we know it, just maybe just reshaped, repackaged. And so we shouldn't be strangers to theater in this new normal. And so on the next slide, we have this saying in theater that the show must go on. And now more than ever, it's been relevant to us and how we work. And I think this is true for most, if not all, groups in the pandemic. So what we did as a group, we regrouped, we met up online, we set limitations, we leveled ourselves with the reality and set limitations of how to go about producing next. And then we just ideated, we tried planning what we could do. The thing that we did at the start of the pandemic was, given that we were at the ECQ situation, we even created plans for if it were ECQ or if we were MECQ or in GCQ, but then with online classes, or even a plan for a GCQ prod, but then with blended classes. So if in ECQ, plan would be to make the most of technology and try to gamify productions for thesis or the upcoming show. But then if we were lucky and then we had online classes but a GCQ situation, we would maybe do something, go somewhere else in the province and talk about the rural life and like how, and make the most out of the quarantine period and turn that into a show. Or if ever we were lucky and we really wanted to do this for our thesis, especially if we were lucky enough to have blended classes, we would hopefully step back into the theater. But again, we're working around the limitation that these shows would use minimal manpower so as to still promote that whole idea of like social distancing and really lessen the risk of people infecting the other even then. So there are a lot of things that we wanted to do, and there are a lot of game plans and backup plans. Even these plans had backup plans, which is something that I think was even more important now that we're in the pandemic, even in especially on the management side. Like one of the things that we learned talaga was instead of having a plan from A to Z, now you have plans from A to Z, 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 you know? So it was, you never know. It's a new platform. We're a physical, I mean, the performing arts in theater is a more physical kind of art form. And going digital, it had a lot of different things that we needed to explore and like test out. But as a group, we figured let's face it head on, and the show must go on. Yeah, so let's do this. So we had, one of the things we did then was we listed the things to consider in a quarantine. Because again, even if we were planning for things that, for hopefully the best case scenario would be that we'd have blended classes, the reality is we'd still be working in the quarantine situation. So one thing to consider was, since our market especially, it became a lot more skewed to those with the access to the internet. While usually our normal market would be those within the vicinity or with access to the school or the theater, now it's changed to those who have not just access to the internet, but stable internet connection. Because another thing then to consider for us was, even in rehearsal, Sam will talk about this later, there is also the fact of actors not being able to connect during a show. So then that limited us to not doing improv or like live productions like from the get-go, which is why in the first production that we created, we started working around like filming or like pre-recording certain shows, our shows. So another thing then was, with the pandemic came the rise of Zoom style theater readings and performances, and this became the new in thing. And like now we are on Zoom, we have these whole we have these webinars and classes, master classes through Zoom, and even short plays and theater readings now. But the downside is, well, for us as a group and as theater students, that the proximity of the camera to the actor kind of draws the attention to more facial acting. We're not just a group of like the production track. We also have people from the performance track, and it's entirely opposite, or it's entirely different to what we've been taught, what they've been taught, what Sila, Phoebe, and Bella have been taught. And so what we wanted to do as senior son is really maximize what we know. So we tried to make it so that we'll be able to showcase all these things that we have learned and maybe attack it in a different way, not through Zoom. Also in Zoom creates, we find that Zoom creates barriers or these walls din minsan. Like now in this whole setup where there are these lines between an actor, and so sometimes it's hard to feed off an actor. It's hard then to get lost in the illusion that these people are sharing a space, because visually you have these small walls or outlines between the different clips, and so that's something we wanted to work around. But then there was also the hype of the show must go online. So this is something that was this is a strong trend within the theater industry during that time, during the start of the pandemic. Not just that people were doing online readings, but people were starting to promote their own shows online, their documented or filmed versions of their physical stagings online. And so then that was another kind of competition that we had to work against. And then with us going online, we're also trying to market against things like Netflix or just online streaming platforms. So then it begged the question of how we would stand out, or it became daunting because bigla lang dumaming competitors natin, and how are we gonna make an impact? How are we gonna make a presence online enough to draw audiences in? And so, well, what we did as Theater 77 is we really just learned to work with it. As we're taught in creating, we have to listen to the materials and work around the circumstances given. So we work with what we have. Again, it's still theater online, but just moved online. If we make mistakes, then we learn from them, because how else would we learn to navigate this new space? So we figured when life gives you a pandemic, write about it. And so Phoebe will tell you more about how we did that.
So we produced the boarding house. So it was our online experiment. It was different from everything that we had done before, but it also dealt with some toxic accidental excrement. And creating the boarding house is like riding a scary roller coaster for the first time. You know it's going to be wild, but you don't know how if you had never done it before. So we made this risky move to bet producing, writing, performing, and editing a show, which is something we'd never done before. And so we made the boarding house, but then how do you write about the pandemic? How do we talk about the new normal without talking about the new normal? When we first started making concepts for the boarding house, it was around June, July in the Philippines, where there was a lot of socio-political unrest, especially about, it's still happening right now, about certain responses by the government and so on. But we didn't want to make direct references. We didn't want to name names. We wanted to be able to make sure that we could produce something that wouldn't cause an unnecessary amount of extra, extra chaos to what's already chaotic. So Kyla, Dominic Molina, another member of Teatro 77, who's not here today, and we came to a conclusion that we should feature something along the lines of a mockumentary documenting exaggerated versions of people living with a life in quarantine. And next slide. So in order to avoid those direct references to the society that we're living in right now, we created the city of Lunan. So it's like an alternate universe, futuristic version of Manila right now. So we set the play in 2030. People were quarantined because of the toxic accidental excrements caused by the flying fish that were outside. So it wouldn't be safe to go outside. And we had characters that were demigods, mythical creatures, humans. While in Manila, of course, we only have humans. At least I'm assuming we only have humans in real life. But, we don't know everything. 2021, please don't give us non-humans. And so anyway, next slide. So we wrote a script, and from the get-go, we had certain rules to follow. For every episode of the play, because we had an episodic structure, we would focus on one character. And that character would then interact with voice actors or people who were just like off stage. That's what we were kind of trying to mimic. And then we also wrote in ensemble scenes so that we could increase that feeling of being in the same place, even though it wouldn't have to be literal. These characters would be interacting with each other through the walls of a house as we would be today. And then for the rehearsal process, we're going to move on to Sam. Take it away.
Yes, hello. So for rehearsal, we had to come up with a way that is safe and that we are social distanced. So we just decided to go with the Zoom format. So we had rehearsals over Zoom, and that also caused a lot of interruptions, like internet connection, and home life, basically. So our four main things that we kept in mind during the pandemic rehearsals and filming was, of course, coordination with each other, with the actors, with the crew members, adjustment if ever there were any last minute things that someone had to do, or had like a last minute class that they didn't remember. And of course, patience and safety. Um, yeah. So with being, of course, with being online, we had a lot of complications during the period of the boarding house, because we had the typhoons. So there were a lot of blackouts, Wi-Fi problems. We also had editing issues, and uh, and this was our first time being online. So our actors had to figure out a way to film themselves. So meaning they had to figure out how to, or where to place their um, memory card, or like they had to yeah, there were a lot of problems that were uh, that we had. So with that, we had to move up deadlines and schedules, and like I said, we adjusted and of course coordinated with each other to so we can make sure naman that we bring out the best product. So yeah, next slide, we have some screenshots from rehearsals. Um, it was a wild time. It was crazy. Yes. So our next slide, I will pass it on to Phoebe to introduce.
This slide contains our pre-show announcements for the boarding house.
Ladies, gentlemen, mortals, mythical creatures, and everyone in between, welcome to the show.
Hey, Morris!
Good midnight, At this time, your time is indeed real. Watch the play unfold the way you want to. No need to silence your cell phones. Smoking, eating, and drinking are to be performed at your leisure in the privacy of your own home.
Why does it smell like fried tilapia?
Making memes of the play is strictly encouraged.
Okay.
Enjoy the show.
Bansky?
All right. Before we proceed, another aspect of online theater that we wanted to have were subtitles, because we don't necessarily always have an interpreter who's going to be available. So we actually wanted to include subtitles so that people who are in the FSL community can actually watch the show as well without having like no context whatsoever. Just going to briefly talk about the filming process itself. So we had 7 actors on stage, but we also had 2 additional actors who would be shown via their cell phones or their the screen, which is going to be on the set. We'll show you later. But an experience that we had was, because we're working from home, we don't have access to professional equipment. Not everybody has an HD camera and a really good mic. So there were things that we had to work around. We used cell phones to record from secondary angles. We used laptop angles as well. We used whatever we had. We even used an iPad for the main camera of one of our characters, Kessie, who's played by Samantha Campos. But I think one of the most specific things that we had to go through, and this is for everyone in the Philippines especially, is that it's really hot when you don't have air conditioning on, especially from like the day to the afternoon. And a lot of our scenes are very physical, but filming a play is gonna take you a couple of hours, right? Even though your monologue is only 20 minutes long. So for sound quality purposes, we actually had to turn off our air guns because the air gun would get picked up by the mics. So air gun off, heat on, cameras, whatever we had, the show was gonna go on. And so we wouldn't be able to do all of that without the help of the creative department. Let's go, Kyla.
Okay, thank you. So Sam and Phoebe discussed the performing aspect of how we did it and how we adapted to the online platform. But the thing is, theater, as we know and love, also has this whole other side, and that's the production design. That so you have the visuals and even the soundscapes and stuff. So what we did, honestly, for the creative process of the show, it wasn't all that different from how we used to design physical shows. In fact, we still made use of the usual softwares and made use of what we had in terms of materials. It just limited us in what we could do and how much we could really set up with the space. But we still have the same software. So we had SketchUp for the set designer and Capture for the lighting designer. And we figured, hey, what if we actually use these renders, these design renders, and use it in actually creating or simulating the stage? So the process went like this. The set designer would ask the actors for what they had in their rooms, actually. And then how much of it we could move around, how much they can actually play with. So shout out to Zach who made all of this possible. So here you have his renders on SketchUp of the rooms of the actors with the ideal dressed set. And then eventually we transferred those renders to Capture for the lighting. So we mimic the lighting, the interior lighting and the stage lighting to really complete the picture. So we added the wings of the stage and the stage floor itself, even the LED screen background. So just to really push that illusion of theater, what we did is we really just stuck by the principles we had when designing even offline. And so you'll see how eventually we had, so on the left you have the lighting design render, that's the set with the lighting, and then eventually on the right you have the realized design care of Phoebe. And I'm gonna throw this back to Phoebe because she'll tell you how she worked her magic with a video on these renders. So yeah.
Okay, so these rectangles are basically what you have raw footage of. So you have 7 rooms. These are all our rooms that have been lit up or redesigned, or even like, how do I explain? Our furniture was moved around for the requirements that were given to us by Zach. So these in themselves already have all these things listed on the slide. So production design, some lighting design internally in the rooms, and the sound design, because we were all already set up for the best possible quality sound that we could have. But how did we put that in the set itself? So it's like cutting up pieces of paper and then sticking it onto the house, except we did it digitally. And then for the background, we actually had an animator. Her name is Tara Javier. She animated the fish so that we could have moving fish in the background throughout the whole play. So really, even though it's theater for online, we did have to involve basically all the designers that we would have to involve for a real life play anyway. It's just a different stage per se. The stage isn't like literal, that's all. And then I'm gonna throw it back to Kyla so we can get the process on the web.
All right, so in the next slide, you'll see that the videos come back to me, and then this is the website of things. They get put up on our virtual theater, which is made accessible through our online front of house, which was then Explore Lunan. So what we really wanted to do with this was to complete the theater experience. We created this virtual front of house, which would do the same things that a physical one would. So we had the show details, the background of the show. We split up the different parts that you would see in a program about the show in this how do you say, this interactive map of Lunan City. And so you could also meet the characters there in some way, find out a little bit more about them, and really it just simulated the whole front of house experience where you would usually wait or buy your tickets before a show, before you enter the theater. And so on the side of the theater naman, what we did was we simulated the chimes, the third, second chimes, first chimes, and then the pre-show announcements, the typical dimming of the house lights, all of which were made possible through all our renders through Capture and even the set on SketchUp, which were used in the videos. And then all of these were programmed and timed as they would have been in a real show. And shout out then to the guy who made this all possible, Ruben Ravago. So really, this wouldn't have been possible without people who really knew their way around these without these online platforms and programming. And this is one thing that we really wanted to make happen, because this was something that we felt was lacking on Zoom plays or something, or the initial like YouTube online theater readings or Facebook streams, because for us it's an important part then for the audience experience to really feel that entrance to the theater, and really the dimming of lights really sets the mood then, and apparently you're about to see a show. And there you have it. When all that was said and done, we had a show ultimately. And then I'll throw this to Bella because she'll tell you more about how the audience saw it and the support that we actually surprisingly got by the end of the.
Thanks, Kyla. So before I begin, I just want to give a quick shout out to Chris, to Kai, and to my parents who are tuned in, and of course to everyone else who's tuned in here on Zoom and on Facebook Live. Thank you so much. Please feel free to keep sending in your questions and thoughts, and we hope that you're enjoying so far. So as Kyla mentioned, we got a surprising amount of media support for the play. Of course, at the time I was an actor, I was also in charge of external relations, and we were faced with the challenge of how exactly to market a play. In all honesty, it was experimental. It's something new that hasn't really been attempted before. And we kind of went in without any expectations. We were just hoping that maybe even one or two people would watch, and we kept an open mind. We ended up having a goal of reaching out to about 5 media partners. We thought if just 5 people will write an article or share and talk about this experimental digital play, then that's enough. Amazingly, the response we got was we ended up partnering with 15 official media partners. These were people that included Business World, Broadway World, Monster RX 93.1, and Inquirer PH. Now, the reason why we want to emphasize this huge amount of media presence is that, again, we went in with no expectations, just wondering if anyone at all would respond to what we were creating, and just the hopes that someone would really sincerely enjoy it. And because of the huge response, what it means, and this is promising for all artists, but especially for theater practitioners who are now having to move onto a digital stage, there is eagerness to see new art being created. There is a desire to explore and to see the future of where theater can go. And thankfully, the more traditional forms of media, newspapers, television, radio, and of course, online media are willing to support the arts community. So we hope that this can leave a good taste in the mouth to understand that there is a possibility. We actually also ended up being featured in 3 countries, Philippines, Korea, and Hong Kong. So again, we even were able to manage a little bit of international exposure. That being said, we had a little bit more media practice. So you can see all of us. Again, unfortunately, not only did Teatro 77 and the whole world have to contend with a pandemic and being forced to cancel our plays, because of the timing of the release of our play, it actually coincided with not one but 2 typhoons, that being Typhoon Ulysses and Typhoon Raleigh. And sakto, exactly when these storms hit, were on the exact dates of our show dates. Unfortunately, this caused citywide blackouts. There's even an ongoing joke that Phoebe was in the middle of editing a scene that actually featured a blackout, and bigla, there was really talaga a blackout. She couldn't finish editing the scene at that time. So that's, art reflecting life, as they say. So we had a little bit of PR practice. We ended up having to release several postponement announcements. We tried to make it a little bit creative. As you can see, there's Kyla and Phoebe. They were presenting the postponement announcements, both in character and out of character, just to try and keep it, again, immersive, to keep the audience engaged with the show. Now, talking about audience response, we had a lot of reviews because we ended up having a Google form at the end of the play where people could submit their thoughts about what this experience was. We can see here from this viewer, they found it very cool how theater is able to translate a face-to-face experience onto a flat screen. The entire website with an interactive map, house, and graphics. So again, because we had decided to try and boost this interactive aspect, essentially we promoted and released the website before the release of the show so that audience members could really immerse themselves into this fictional universe we had created, Lunan City, Lunan Universe, to try and connect with the characters even before they'd met them. This viewer, again, they were impressed at how the boarding house was able to translate the theater experience online. It felt organic and natural. And so again, this was wonderful feedback for us to hear, because that's exactly why we wanted to try something different from what had been presented before, being the YouTube plays and the Zoom plays. We wanted to try and capture more of that very theater feeling. And so again, the decision to choose cinematography that featured the entire body and not just the face also adds to the theater feel of it, because a performer really doesn't just use their face and their voice, they really use their body, their posture, and their tone expressed through that. So thankfully it did resonate in the play. And finally, this person said that they loved it because it felt, and this is very heartwarming, it felt like a comeback, especially when adapting to a new normal. Again, they responded to this better than the Zoom call acts. There's a bit more flavor and a bit more of that theatrical feeling that we love, which was really what we wanted to try and encapsulate with the boarding house. So what does this mean? Again, to recap very quickly, Teatro 77 at this point had created 3 shows. Cadaver, which was our first successful show and was staged in the Black Box of the School of Design and Arts. The second show being Kung Paano Maghiwalay, it's the show that got away, was incredibly promising, but unfortunately had to be canceled due to the pandemic. And our third production, The Boarding House, which was our first foray onto the digital theater spectrum. And what we learned from all of these experiences is that ultimately, as much as we want to mimic theater as closely as possible when it comes to an online forum, we can't. There is something magical about being in the same room as a performer, feeling their energy, feeling their passion. It's palpable. And unfortunately, through a digital spectrum, if we try to mimic it and we try to stick to the old ways and the traditional ways of theater, sometimes it can fall flat. Therefore, rather than fight the change, we need to use the medium to our advantage. We need to find new ways to explore what digital theater can mean. But how? Which brings us to our next production, Lying Creatures. So this is a play produced by myself, Kyla, Samantha, and Phoebe as our head of marketing and graphics. It's a play that I wrote and directed, and we'll tell you a little bit more about it. The concept of lying theater. So again, as we'd said before, trying to stick to theater in its most traditional form wasn't quite working. There were challenges that we faced, and we wanted to see how we can push the envelope a bit further. Therefore, how do we mix the mediums? What differentiates theater and what differentiates it from film? We actually came up with 2 forms of inspiration. So for myself, I'm Filipina and Danish, and so I'm a fan of watching Danish film. And I watched a remarkable film that was absolutely incredible. It's called The Guilty. And the concept of the film is that it follows a man who is on this very nerve-wracking adventure. However, he's only discovering parts of the story on the phone. So essentially, it's one man in a room on the phone. The second form of inspiration we got is from the very popular online game Among Us. It's a forum game where essentially players from all over the world interact with each other to kind of decide what happens next in the game. What we ended up doing was taking aspects from both of these forms of art and combining them. And so we were thinking, okay, it's a pandemic, we need to keep our performers safe. We can't have more than one person in a room. So we have a single actress and a single set. We keep it minimal, we put an emphasis on performance, and she'll interact with voice actors. Secondly, in terms of cinematography and filming, we cannot rely on cinematic effects. What does that mean? We can't focus too much on things that can only be achieved through the lens of a camera. We still have to keep it theater. Therefore, we'll be using a combination of single shots and cuts in the filming of the performance. And finally, and this is the really exciting part, this is a hybrid of live performance and film. We will have filmed scenes with our actress, along with live improv performance from two performers and consistent audience interaction. And what it comes together is an interactive play in which you, the audience, decide what happens next. And so to go on to the process of how exactly we achieve this, I'll pass this on to Samantha, our stage manager, for the rehearsals, filming, and dubbing.
Yes, so rehearsals, it wasn't all that different from Boarding House. We still used the Zoom format, and we also filmed. And what was different about this was we actually had to dub over the scenes because what happened was we found there were different background noises that were not, we weren't able to hear the main actor, so we had to dub over. Yeah. And so for the production design of the lying creatures, we were inspired by the 1940s film noir. So as you can see here, this was I think one of the first sketches of our set of lying creatures. And so what Kyla mentioned a while ago, it wasn't all that different from having in-person theater. However, what was different this time was we actually had to construct an actual set, which was done in a satellite setup. So the production team had to, of course, practice safety, and they had to work from their homes. So they constructed the set in their own homes. They painted the props and such. So what happened was we had to deliver the final set pieces and the props to our main actor through a delivery service.
So the same process goes. We filmed it this time with a set, actual physical set, and then as soon as all the videos were went through post processing, then we put it up online again. So the thing is, this time we still had the online FOH, but this time it's adapted to sell tickets, because now the difference between PPH and Lying Creatures is that now it is a ticketed event, which, by the way, guys, buy your tickets if you haven't yet. So you can see what we're all talking about. Not much really changes about the online FOH. What matters naman is that we get the same pieces of information out in the same way. It's still interactive. You can still explore the site and go through the different case files this time, like learn about the suspects, the case itself, and such. But what really changed now was the platform that we actually have the show on. Well, before it was hosted on a web page on our virtual theater. This time it's now hosted on we made use of the Google Cloud platform, and we have the incorporation of Jitsi, which is an open source software, not unlike Zoom, but it's a bit more malleable, which was why this is what we used for the forum parts, for the audience forum parts of the show. So yeah, but then the thing is, now that that's a sample of how the Jitsi screens look. Next, please. So you'll see that the audience members, other than the actor and our director Bala, everyone else was anonymous, because one thing that we wanted to do, especially given that we wanted to push the interaction of the audience, is to ensure that the audience would be safe and have the sense of security in this space. We wanted to protect their data privacy, and of course, ensure that we create this safe space for them to freely interact. So there's this question of how we would create this virtual anonymity, because sometimes, again, it's a ticketed thing, and we ask for their email to be able to send these virtual tickets. And so how are we gonna ensure that the audiences personal identity would not be disclosed, or personal information would not be disclosed to everyone else, and that it would be safe and really just kept with the people who needed to know it. So then we created this login system which helps you to create your own identity as a spectator, as someone who would be involved in solving this case online, involved and really just experience the play. So we created this whole identity or pseudonym where you have to pick your favorite color and creature and really become one of the creatures who are participating in the play. And so there you have it. That's aside on the tech aspect. Next, I think, is Bella. We'll tell you more about the whole concept again of how theater meets film noir.
Thanks, Kyla. So yes, exactly. What's the idea and why theater and film noir? So for myself, in terms of writing, these are two of my personal passions. I love theater and I love classic film. And the reason why we decided then to go with a period piece and with film noir is that what it does is it presents an interesting challenge and opportunity on the part of the production design. Because as we all know, film noir means a dark film, and essentially it's always in black and white. What we then challenged ourselves to do was to achieve this look entirely without the assistance of post-processing of the video. What does that mean? It means this play is entirely in black and white because of practical effects, the building of the set, the design of the props and the costumes, and the makeup on the actors themselves. We combine this with lighting and boom, you have an instant black and white film. So again, even though this is a digital play, and yes, it is filmed, or parts of it are filmed at least, there's a certain sense, a je ne sais quoi, that you can only find in theater, because the reality is, if we were to stage this as an actual play, we wouldn't be able to edit it. It would have to be completely black and white. So it presented a very unique opportunity for the production design as well to achieve this. Now, going more a little bit into the story behind the story, as the old saying goes, artists create what they know. They write what they know, especially. And of course, apart from the pandemic that completely changed the world in 2020, a lot was happening all over the world, both in the Philippines and in the Western world. There was this sense of the polarization of the media and the struggle to understand what was actually happening and what was true. When it comes to news outlets, it was very easy for them to find one particular perspective and cater all of their news articles to fit that. Unfortunately, what this means is for us as citizens who are looking for the truth of the story, if you're only going to stick to one particular news outlet or one particular Facebook group, chances are you're only getting one side of the story. This is the polarization of the media. Of course, then we talk about unsanctioned love. Even in a modern time like this, there's still tension for people who don't identify with the conventional and conservative community and what that means for people living in this modern age. And finally, the politics of protest, again, happening both in the Philippines and all over the world, protesting movements such as Black Lives Matter, and even right now, the hashtag Stop Asian Hate. These are realities that we as artists and young people have to live with. And so what I wanted to try and encapsulate is the fact that these are issues that, even though we face them today, they've been around for a long time. It's sad enough that I could write a story based in the 40s that can actually still touch on the exact same themes. So these are three ideas and concepts that I latched onto, and then combined it with my love for film noir, for true crime, for theater, and thus came up with Lying Creatures. So what is Lying Creatures? Lying Creatures is an interactive online theater experience combining film and live performance. Let's take you through the story. It's 1946 in the seedy Lunan City. A lone detective works to solve the case of the century. The mayor's daughter has gone missing. Just as the trail is going cold, the detective receives a tip-off from a mysterious caller. The true culprit is well hidden among the liars, and it's up to you, the audience, to make the call. So without further ado, we're very excited to be showing you the trailer for Lying Creatures in the next slide.
If anyone can solve this, it's you.
That poor girl's probably dead by now with the way you're dragging your feet on this case.
The suspects are all creatures.
vampire, gorgon, witch.
I don't care what you think you've heard.
She knew what she was signing up for.
Truth is whatever you want it to be.
Everyone's got something to hide.
Would you just listen?
A little advice. Assume they're lying.
And there you have it. That's the trailer of Flying Creatures, which opens tomorrow. So please, if you guys haven't gotten your tickets yet, come and watch. A little note lang, we forgot to advise, sorry, that there were subs for the trailer. So for those who want to watch it with the subtitles or closed captions on, you can actually see it on the Benilde Theater Arts page. It's already hard-coded into the video, while on YouTube, you can always turn the subs on. Again, like closed captions and subtitles are always a very important thing for us now in the things that we produce. And so we make it a point to really do include those captions in all our films, or in all the videos that we post of the play. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, Bella told you guys what's up and coming, but then the question is what's next, right? What comes after that? It changes from what now that we're in the pandemic to what's next after we've learned to navigate this whole thing. And well, even after Lying Creatures ends, in true Theater 77 fashion, we plan to continue to create and innovate new ways to bring theater to you, whether it be online or on the virtual stage or in physical theaters, which we hope will open like really soon. But you know, safety always comes first, especially for the audience. And so we'll always be innovating or trying to creatively figure out new ways to play around with this new medium, with this new platform, and really just like push for theater arts and to push for its like continued live online. So yeah, so just stay tuned to Theater 77 and also your local and favorite theater groups, and continue to follow us and them on your socials. And we just ask that you continue to support the theater industry, keep the love for theater alive, and we hope to see you guys really soon, because the theater arts has gone through wars. You know, it's died. It's kind like it's never really died.
Theater will never die.
Theater will never die. It continues to go on even in the smallest of spaces or the smallest of communities. So it will always be there, and we plan to really just keep that up and continue creating. So on behalf of Theater 77, thank you guys for your support, your support of the theater industry, and really just stay there. Stay there, hang in there, because the show really must go on. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Kyla, Sam, Phoebe, Bella of Teatro 77. That was a really exciting presentation, mind-blowing, and I'm certain that our audience were able to pick up a lot of tips for their future productions. I mean, I already have copious notes And I hope that you guys were able to inspire them in their future endeavors. So now we open the session for some questions from our audience. Please send it through the comment section of this live stream. We have a wonderful team of Jello, Kate, Jadine, Rafa, and Anne managing your comments. On Zoom, I have with me the amazing team of Glenn, Shema, Bessie, Meryl, Jerry, and Rachel. We will try to get through as many questions as we can, but if we run out of time, we encourage you to continue the conversation online through various social media channels. You can tag our speakers using the social media handles that they have provided on our posters. And please do not forget to use #Betha so that others can also learn from your thoughts. All right, so again, let's start with questions. Oh, we actually have audience from Alberta, Canada, and they're actually amazed about the 15 partners that you were able to get for TBH. We have audience from Batangas, Quezon City, okay. And from Miss Rochi Peterson, even renowned artists of British theater and some Broadway actresses here will be watching. Good luck. I think she's pertaining to Lying Creatures, right? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, a lot of comments, intrigued and excited about the upcoming production of Teatro 77, which is Lying Creatures. Okay, so we have some questions here. As theater students experiencing the hardships pertaining to creating online productions during this COVID-19 pandemic, are you still hopeful and excited to create more works in the digital stage? Anyone?
I mean,
silence.
No, I think, well, okay. I think this might be because we all have different preferences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, I love playing around with new things. I love like innovating and trying to figure out like ways out of sticky situations or making them like turn into new opportunities to make new things, you know. So this whole pandemic, while it has been a challenge, it's also been like this, how do I say this? Like this opportunity to really play around because there are no rules. It's not an established form in that theater, like there's no rules for theater online, right? So like with every other group, we're really just trying to play around and figure things out. And there are some things that we can do now with the use of the digital platform that we couldn't have done in physical theater. So that's it for me.
Anyone would like to
For
add?
me, same with Kyla. I'm hopeful that we can get to produce more, especially with the experience that we have. The productions that we produced, like The Boarding House and Lying Creatures, we have really experienced a lot of different issues and problems that, of course, we have learned from now, and that we always take note of those tiny things that so that we can produce more and become better, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for me.
Great. Phoebe, Bella, you want to say something about this question?
I think they kind of covered most of it. Yeah, I mean, long story short is, as Kyla mentioned earlier, theater never dies. You know, Shakespeare wrote those incredible works like Macbeth during a plague. And the reality is that theater is an art form that responds to the world around it. So the more that happens, the more that we have to draw from and the more that we have to inspire us and propel us to keep creating stories, because that's simply what theater is. It's storytelling, it's connecting to the people around you, and pandemic or no pandemic, live or not live, that's always going to be possible. So yes, 100%, we can keep creating, we can always keep innovating, and who knows, this could be exactly the the catalyst that theater needed to boost the industry, especially when, if ever we are able to open up again, I do have a feeling people will be eager to get back into live theater as well. So honestly, as long as you try to look at the positive side, there's only upsides to be able to trying to create something new.
Yeah. Amy?
Well, yeah, I am hopeful for digital theater, both during the pandemic and, of course, eventually after. The way theater will change now in the digital medium will affect theater afterwards. And I'm excited for that, how that's going to be. Because, for example, we're doing interactive theater now with a website. There's like voting and all that. You can also bring that out into the real world. Just how you do it in that live physical medium is going to change. But theater is always just going to keep going.
I guess what most students in the performing arts would like to learn or hear from you is this idea of how you were able to pull through that initial setback with the lockdown. I mean, you always say that KPM or Kung Paano Maghiwalay is the one that got away. I mean, you were about to produce a major theater production, and then the lockdown happened, all of these restrictions. So where and how did you find the courage to actually start over and create this production, The Boarding House? Go, Phoebe.
Kung Paano Maghiwalay deals with the topic of love and loss. We really loved Kung Paano Maghiwalay as a story and as a production. But we also had to go through that kind of relationship with the play when we lost the opportunity to stage it. So like, how did we get through it? We love theater. We love what we do. And even though we did so much work, essentially, actually, we were doing academic work. But we could have just done the bare minimum to get the grade. But we went beyond it because we love what we do. That's how we got through it.
It's really the passion to create and to tell stories. Because a lot of students, and you can't fault them for feeling that way. I mean, we all have our own ways of coping during the pandemic, So I think when they are ready to create, I hope they get inspired by the digital productions that you have started. Okay, we have my chat box is actually going off in all of these questions.
There's a lot of questions, yes.
I know. I hope that I get to go through all of them. This one is from Martin Christian de Rosario. Is there a chance that you had created this for a live audience? If there was a chance that you have created this for a live audience, how different would the flow be for both Lying Creatures and The Boarding House?
Do one of you want to take Boarding House and I'll take Lying Creatures?
Something to think about. Also, because I think it's something we have. Wait.
Yeah.
Because again,
we have discussed it.
Yeah. These are pieces that we really created with the pandemic in mind. These are pieces inspired by the pandemic. The boarding house palang, the whole situation. Man, that was the storyline of the boarding house.
I think what's interesting about the question of Martin, if I'm not mistaken,
it's how we would stage
the flow.
Yeah, how would the flow be? I mean, for Lying Creatures, so speaking as a writer, interestingly enough, writing for a stage and writing for a digital play or for online is not actually that different. When I wrote the script, I envisioned how it would be staged on an actual stage. And I had created it in mind, with the hope that it would one day be staged with a live audience that would directly be interacting with the performers on stage. So in terms of flow, it's actually pretty similar. Of course, where the differences come in is that in an actual forum theater, audience members would just shout out answers and like, I want the detective to do this, and I think this person did it, and I think this person's guilty. When it comes to an online platform, what we created and what Kyla's dad built for the website, which was amazing, is this live chat forum. Again, very similar to the game Among Us. You remain anonymous, and similar to here or Zoom or on Facebook, you just type out your answers instead. So that's the main difference. But in terms of flow, it's actually relatively similar.
Right. Okay.
To add lang then sa Lying Creatures, like what Bella said, it's very similar to everything that's been done before offline. The whole interactive aspect, more than Among Us, the base for that was the first interactive cinema, which was done in a physical space where people had buttons just to choose like green or red if they wanted to vote for this scene or this certain action. So in the same way, because what we did with these productions is we really just tried to adapt what we already knew. And so we didn't really stray so much from how it would have been done offline. And so putting that into perspective, that helps to put into perspective then this whole situation na we're not actually doing something entirely new. It's not something we have to figure out from scratch because it's already there. The foundation's there. We just work with what we've learned, what we know, and then work our way around it. Yeah. For TVH, sorry.
Continue. Sorry.
For TVH, I think Phoebe or Sam might be able to say because we've actually planned it before how we would have done it.
Yeah. So for TBH, what we had in mind was probably promenade and immersive. So like the audience would walk through rooms, which were the character rooms like Cassie, Mimi, Lucy, and the like. Yeah, that's just the general idea.
Especially because the boarding house has one start and one ending, but the middle can change depending on how you watch the play online. So the same thing would happen if you were doing promenade or you walk through theater. The story will change depending on how you perceive it and in the order you go through it. But essentially, it is the same story. So yeah.
So there's an interesting question from Boom Gonzalez. Looking at the two productions, the Lunan City happens to be the common thread. How did you come up with the lore of Lunan City and the creatures?
Well, for Lunan City itself, it really was we were looking for a way to talk about things we wanted to talk about without directly talking about things, especially because we have certain laws here in the Philippines that might make it difficult if you want to talk about social issues, right?
Oh, no. Yeah.
So, so that's why we really wanted to make Lunan. We wanted to talk about surveillance, about censorship, without saying that was happening. So we made Lunan so we could put our creativity in a place that could also be safe. So we made our own like box where it's like here, it can be a safe alternate place, alternate location to deal with these topics. And so it also passed on to Lying Creatures.
Right. So creating that space for discussion, starting a discussion, I guess, because I think really theater doesn't have to be, direct or directly addressing a particular issue or concern. It can hide behind certain layers, make it more exciting for the audience to discover and analyze and talk about. Right. Okay. So Ms. Rochi Peterson said that it's amazing how the pandemic has turned out to be slightly of a challenging blessing, but has also served as a platform to open doors to global audience. Oh, that's right, actually, because now everybody has access.
That's exactly it.
Yanni Buenaventura asked, did you at certain points had doubts, fears before showcasing the online productions to the public, given theater's ephemeral?
Wow. Did we ever?
To be completely transparent, we really set our expectations low for the boarding house because what we wanted to do there was really experiment and for ourselves, we wanted to use it as an avenue to play and really just test the waters, you know. And so there were so many times that we doubted like whether this would be a good show or not, whether, because even I think it happens to everyone too, that as you're creating, then you start to doubt what you're creating more and more. Like at the start, it's something, I think even in physical theater, at the start you're so proud and so like game and so into it. And then as you get closer to the opening or the premiere, it's like, oh my gosh, have we made a good decision? Should we postpone? Should we do something? You know, so but I mean, we faced it. Head on. We just dove in head first. So like, yeah.
I
It
think,
happened.
yeah. Also, like, I mean, just to add on to what Kyla is saying, like, this is the reality of being an artist. You're cutting out a piece of your heart, you're putting it on a platter and just saying, okay, world, give me what you got. But something to keep in mind, and I hope as well, if there are any young artists out there or other theater practitioners who are doubting or wondering if they should even be brave enough to dip their toes into the water, please do. The reality is, if you're being brave enough to create something, whether or not it fails or succeeds, you've already achieved something because you were brave enough to step into that arena. And of course, you're going to get good feedback and you're going to get bad feedback. And that's the reality of it. But you need to let it bounce off. You need to remember that you're in that arena, and people who are just watching from the seats, they'll throw things at you, but you have to let it drop and you have to keep moving, keep creating, because like anything else, practice makes perfect. You have to practice being brave, and you have to practice taking a risk.
Right. Okay. I have to ask, for the next question, I have to ask our tech also if we can support it. We have Miss Myra, one of our audience here in Zoom, who wants to ask a question, but she has to deliver it through sign language. Can we put her on spotlight? Can we include her so she can ask? And we'll have Miss Dea interpret it. Okay. I don't know, that's Miss Rochi.
Hi, Mom.
Miss put in. That's Bella's mom.
Supportive.
We love that.
Right. Okay. So let's have Miss Myra. That's right, Miss Myra.
Hello.
Hi.
Congratulations to all of you for your good work. I'm really proud and happy about that. I'd just like to ask something about your team. How long did you create this process? Is it before the pandemic? Did you do this show before the pandemic, or did you do it during the pandemic? Because I was seeing your the boarding house, your plates. I saw it earlier. How long were you able to organize or direct all of these stories, all the process? Is it 1 year preparation, or is it just short time?
Oh my gosh.
This question.
Those are very practical questions, which I think a lot of our audience members would benefit from, because the outcome is really amazing. And if you think about it from the outside, if you don't know the process, it may look daunting. Okay, so I guess to inspire them as well, tell them how long and all the effort that you put into it.
Phoebe.
Okay, so the boarding house, we started thinking about it when school wasn't even announced yet. We just wanted to stage something, and then hopefully it would then be approved for our theater production class. So we started writing that around June concepts, and we finished the script after revisions and revisions and revisions, like the week before we started filming. So the actual months are from boarding house, June to November,
6 months,
December.
actually.
6 months.
Working
We had a
on
long
the
time.
boarding house.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, and for Lying Creatures, which is, it's actually crazy because I was just talking to someone about it today who asked me how long this process took. Guys, I just counted. Lying Creatures has been less than 3 months. January, February, and March, and we're premiering tomorrow, which in all I mean, all things considered, I don't even know how we did that.
Actually, yeah. Connecting this back to the having doubts thing, this because we saw how long it took us to get TBH up, then so a lot of things happened then at the start of Flying Creatures, the conceptualization period of Flying Creatures, and there were a lot of setbacks that. So when we were actually looking at the schedule, like the management team, we were looking at the schedule, and it was like, can we actually do this? It was the shortest amount of time that we've had to work on a production that we've ever worked on in Benilde, actually. So we had both the longest with the boarding house and the shortest with Flying Creatures. So, yeah, that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
I would just like to ask, were your expenses higher or is it lower for your costing or your production cost? Because right now, you know, we are in a pandemic, so we would like to consider those because it's really creative, but we're wondering if you had more production expenses.
Actually, well, for the boarding house, it was a rule for us to not put out any cash or have any production cost. So we were lucky enough that we found a team that would be willing to do it for free. Like they volunteered their own time and efforts and talents, and so we're also thankful for everyone who is a part of it. For Lying Creatures, though, since it is our Bella, Sam, and I's thesis production, we really wanted to push the production aspect of it, the visuals and such. So this time we did put in some money, but I think compared to most of the previous productions, although correct me if I'm wrong, we've actually spent a lot less than we would have if we would have done it on in person. Because again, but I think this also can be attributed to how resourceful you are in the manpower you have and the materials that you use, because anything really can be done. if there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, I think especially for this pandemic, as long as your heart's in it or as long as you really want to make it happen, you can.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miss Myra.
Thank you for that.
So we still have a lot of questions, actually. There are a lot. There are tons, actually. What are the advantage and disadvantage of using website to showcase your play? So maybe one of you can just answer that. Advantage and disadvantage of using website to showcase your play. And somebody also asked kind of how long from doing it from scratch. The website. What are the advantage and disadvantage of using website to showcase your play?
Wanna go, Kyla?
Web and tech head.
Okay. Aren't you tired of hearing from me? Please don't get tired of hearing from me. For web, I think the most advantageous part is, I think, the accessibility of the audience. Other than it opens your market to, it opens your audience to demographic to those even like halfway around the world. Like now that we have Bella's audience.
I'm directing from another country, guys. There's benefits to online theater.
So it helps to get your art farther. It opens that opportunity to reach farther. But then it also helps you with, example, it opens the whole opportunity to use like closed captioning and subtitles. So it allows for a really more inclusive audience. The cons, though, to like having things on a website is, again, especially in the Philippines, you have to consider the bandwidth of your audience members, because that will limit the people who can watch, and that also limits things that you can do. Like we said, we can't do a full live, or we can, but we chose not to do a full live production or an improv kind of show because with consideration to the quality then of the video that the viewers would receive and such. So
Right.
yeah, that's basically it, I think.
Yeah, I guess you have a benefit of being able to broadcast it outside, get more audience, but the problems of technology will always get in the way. But more importantly, that's an interesting that you mentioned about accessibility. A while ago, I think you want to make the boarding house accessible because you want to put subtitles, and you don't have access to an interpreter all the time, no. So I think that's an opportunity for digital or online theater to actually do, no, make it more inclusive to the hard of hearing, to the deaf, as well as those with visual impairments. Which also reminds me, we will have a webinar on April about accessibility. We'll have speakers from SDEAS. Miss Dea is actually going to be one of them, and Miss Myra. And we also have speakers from Resources for the Blind Incorporated, who will also tell us how we can make our productions more accessible. Okay, so please visit our page to know the schedule. I think it's in April. Right. Okay. So one quick answer from each of you. If you were to quote anything from the show that you would use in real life, which or what would it be? For all of you.
Which show?
Which show?
Just pick one, either TBH or Lying Creatures.
For Lying Creatures, the truth is what you make of it.
I have a funny one from TV.
Same.
It's Lucy's. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
That's Lucy's line, the best line. I'm fine. This is fine. Everything is fine.
Honestly, that's like the most for me. Like, it's so important that you're able to ground yourself in facing what's the situation at hand. As long as you're able to calm yourself down and like really assure yourself that you're okay, so then things will be okay at some point. That's
yeah. Phoebe?
For me, it's Hala's line, "Mortal ka girl," because I think an important thing to remember is that we don't, even though we want to keep going, we also have to like rest. That's super important.
What's the line again? What's that?
Mortal ka girl.
Mortal.
Mortal.
Okay. Sam?
Mine is kind of longer than them. It's one of the lines of Lying Creatures. It's you're telling me you're telling me that you don't look for the story that's to just shape the truth to find the narrative. You need to close a case.
Right. Okay. So I'm just skipping on some questions that I think the speakers were able to touch on in their presentation or was answered a little while back. So apologies if I didn't get to read your question. But one interesting question from Ethan Wong. I think it's a pretty fun question to think about. Were there any scrapped ideas, cut content from the production that will we possibly see? And will we possibly see a Zack Snyder Thesis Girls special in the future?
So Ethan, this question is for Lying Creatures? Or for the boarding house?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, for both, I guess.
For both.
For Lying Creatures, no.
Anyone can answer it.
Well, I think there is also probably stuff from the boarding house as well. For Lying Creatures specifically, maybe we'll release something. Again, and this is one of the upsides of actually being able to film a performance. We had an incredibly talented cinematographer. She is currently taking a master's of film at UP Diliman, and looking through some of her footage. But again, we had to kind of be economic on what we decided to do because we didn't want to go too cinematic on it. But the reality is there is a lot of footage with the emphasis more on Sari Labrador, who plays the detective, and there's a lot there that makes it beautiful. So we might release a film cut as opposed to an interactive theater cut, but we'll see. Maybe not.
I guess maybe they're interested in finding out if there is a behind the scenes documentary about creating these productions. Maybe that's an idea for the future for Theater 77, right? Okay, so one question for all, I guess. Quick answer for all of you, from all of you. What is the one greatest takeaway that you got from this production? I hear the
One.
One.
Just one. Pick one.
I think for me, it's gonna be the same. I think always. It's to be patient all the time. You have to adjust to everyone. You have to make sure that also you have to make sure that everyone is okay. Always ask them because of course we are in a pandemic, so you always have to make sure that everyone is doing okay, and always have to be patient. Even when you're having a bad day yourself, you have to, yeah, be patient.
Kyla?
For me, aside from having so many backup plans, the importance of a backup plan, and it would probably be to see challenges as opportunities. You never know when you're gonna get a pandemic again, like that's like always look on the bright side. You never know when you're gonna work on something in this kind of situations, and what you learn from it can help you grow. So face it head on, take it as an opportunity. Yeah, that's it.
Right, Phoebe?
For me, it's remember who you're doing it for. Because one of the first lessons in theater is you're not doing it for yourself. So it's theater is a collaborative art form, and so there's always a give and take. And yeah, it's just like, oh, I'm so tired. The audience won't know. It'll be worth it. like that's what parang mantra na lang eh. Remember who you're doing it for. It's okay.
Right. That will actually give you the passion to push through, despite the difficulties or the struggles that you might encounter. Bella?
Gosh, honestly, there's so many. Those were all so good. I think honestly, the thing I've learned is just keep going. There is going to be a lot of challenges, and sometimes you'll really question yourself. You'll wonder, is this worth it? Did I even choose the right career? Why am I even doing this? And the answer to that is just to keep moving forward. Even if it's one step forward and two steps back, just keep going, keep moving, keep pushing, and trust that it's going to turn out okay one way or the other, because you've learned from it. So keep going and don't give up.
Great. Okay, I'm just gonna mention this comment from Dr. Doc Sunita, Doc Suni, on Facebook. I think she was pertaining to a heartbreaking situation, the cancellation, I believe that she was pertaining to the lockdown, which you turned around. How Adele of you. She also mentioned that theater is the mother of all arts, no matter what the film people say. And that the mere act of being in the arena, on stage, spotlight on Zoom, is an act of absolute courageous vulnerability. The ones watching and criticizing are just sitting there absorbing, hopefully transforming from the efforts of the actors and the production creative team. That's actually a good point. But here's our question. Cinematic versus theatric language. How does the grammar of these genres change the story, the emphasis, the experience? I guess she's pertaining to how you negotiated the boundaries of these elements.
Yes. Oh my God.
And flying creatures.
Story, the emphasis, and the experience. I guess you kind of touched on it a while ago.
It's something we learned from TBH.
Yeah, we had to. There were certain movements that we planned to do at first, but then weren't able to because it didn't really it didn't reflect in the camera as like it didn't it didn't show what we wanted to show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we really just had to adjust to what would look better or what would look
Yeah.
good in camera.
I think it kind of ties up on a question that you answered a while back. Is this still theater? The way you negotiated all of these elements, the language of film, the language of marketing and promotions on social media, and the language of theater. When you put it all together, how does it affect the story or the experience that you create? I think that's what Miss Doc Sunita was aiming for.
I think, theater, especially in how we treat it, like theater still is a collaborative art form, even in this platform, online platform. You still have all these elements. You have the tie between the production design elements and the performance elements and all the management behind it. Not to say that this doesn't happen in film, but I think what really differs is our process of things, of creating and putting a show up together. Like in film, perhaps there's more emphasis on the editing aspect, whereas to maintain the theatricality, we really just kept the post-processing to just minimal cuts and like certain like cleaning, I guess, in terms of like audio and such, which we wouldn't have to do otherwise if we were on a physical space. But in the elements and what we use and what we emphasize, it's still, I think, the same thing as if we would have done it offline. There still is always a message that we want to say, and it's really just a matter of how we're able to convey it to the audience. And even then, if you have, I think it's a conscious decision it's always been a conscious decision for us to maintain the theatricality of the things and how we approach or go about this process of getting that message to the audience or connecting with the audience.
Right.
I think also, sorry, go ahead. I think just to kind of also add on to what Sam and Kyla have said, like the medium is the message. And so in terms of using film, it's a tool that we're using to help tell the story. But the reason why it still is theater and how we're able to strike the balance is, especially with Lying Creatures, there are show dates. Please be on time for your show. And please feel free to interact with the other alive, living, breathing people that are in that digital stage with you. And that's kind of what theater comes down to, is that it's not just collaboration with other artists, it's ultimately a collaboration. It's a conversation between an audience and a performer.
Right. I think what I was able to gather from your presentation is that you, as much as possible, try to get some of the elements of the theater experience and appropriated them into the new platform. So I guess you're in a way, in your own way, you're still trying to be faithful in that kind of experience. And it doesn't matter which site it is, whether on site or online, as long as you're telling the story, it's all that matters, right? Okay, so we're down to the last two questions and we need to wrap up. Someone is asking, actually, as pioneer artists who started the lore and the universe of Lunan City, would you allow younger batches to make canon productions as your legacy here in Benilde?
First
Maybe
of all,
just one or two of you can answer this.
Thank you, first of all, for even thinking that you want to make canon productions after Lunan. Thank you, Darcy. But it's also, we started Teatro 77 as just batch 117, but it has always been a collaboration between professors and friends in different courses. I don't want to close the door. I don't think any of us want to close the door on Teatro 77's productions involving all the younger batches who want to be part of it.
I guess it's short to saying that if you want to use the myth, you have to work with us, I guess.
Well, because work with us.
It's the brainchild of Teatro 77. Of course, you will have your copyright for that. It kind of ties up with what future plans you might have for Teatro 77, especially when you graduate, when you have more time to start capitalizing on this mythology that you guys were able to create. Okay, so for our last question, what one piece of advice can you share for aspirants of theater and production amidst the online setting and challenges it imposes given the success of TBH and Line Creatures? Advice.
Think of the limitations as think of the limitations as an opportunity for creativity. The smaller the box is, the more creative you have to be about arranging the elements inside it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my advice.
Yeah, for me, I think it's being open. Just be open to the possibilities, to whatever comes at you, be it issues or be it like a good thing. Just be open to it and don't close your mind to just one thing. Yeah.
Kayla?
Don't be afraid to play. It's theater, and theater we were taught to play. At the very basic thing you have to do is really just play, experiment, explore, be creative, have fun. Yeah, there never is something that's ultimately wrong or ultimately right in theater. Sometimes you just find that certain things work with this certain show, or with a certain platform, or maybe it's not the time for this. So don't try to think of it as we have to get this right in one try. In adapting to this, you have to be able, for you to consider it a success for yourself, you have to be able to get the show up, and for it to be received by the public, for it to be positively received by the public. It's daunting because it's something that's entirely new, but you shouldn't let that stop you, because at the end of the day, what matters is that you tried. And that's how we thought about it then. All we wanted to do was to be able to say that, hey, we tried. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And we learn. We know now that it doesn't work. And so we'll do better, and we'll try to figure something else out. And so, yeah, just always play. Don't be afraid to play, and really just believe in yourself. Because, again, if there's a will, there's a way. Turn every challenge into an opportunity. And if you'll figure it out as you go along, because Kamiran, we're just figuring things out as with each production. So
right. Okay, and Bella?
Gosh, you guys said it all. I think honestly, all I can add on to it is just be kind. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, the people you're working with, and be kind to your ideas. Remember that you are enough, and that if you're here, you have the capabilities to achieve what you want to if you remember why you're doing it. So just no matter what the world throws at you, and it is an unkind world at times, don't ever lose that. You stay kind, you rise above it, you remember why you're doing it, and you push through it.
Right. Okay, I guess from this entire session, what we can somehow pick up or take away is this idea that it's not just about writing what you know or creating with what you know. Now it becomes creating with where you are, and what you have. And if you understand and if you understand yourself, if you know yourself enough, you will be able to get inspiration to create and to tell stories with relevant message. Okay. I guess it doesn't really matter what kind of media you're doing as long as you're sincere with the kind of stories that you want to say. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, girls. Thank you for making time. That's all the time we have, unfortunately. So we would like to thank you, and we wish you good luck, break a leg in your show.
Thank
tomorrow.
you. Please watch Line Creatures.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. For our audiences, unfortunately, that's the only time that we have for this session. We encourage you to continue the conversation online through various social media channels. You can tag our speakers with their social media handles. They have provided it on our posters, but please do not forget to use #Betha so that others can also learn from your thoughts. We invite you to share your thoughts to help us improve this webinar series by completing a quick survey, which has been posted occasionally in the Facebook comments section of this live stream. We are open to suggestions for future webinar topics that might interest you. Please remember that we produced this webinar series with you guys in mind, students, theater practitioners, and enthusiasts. And lastly, a recording of our session will be made available on our YouTube channel in the coming weeks, so please check back to this Facebook page for the announcement and be updated for our upcoming sessions. And while you're here, please like and share our page. All right, thank you very much, girls, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye. Right, okay, so speaking of our upcoming webinars, we have tomorrow actually, we have Tanghalsan, New Realities Insights and Spaces for the Live Performing Arts. That's on March 25 at 3 p.m. We have our speakers, Mr. Jay Aranda and Ms. Sunshine Domine. On Friday, March 26 at 3 p.m., we have beauty expert and self-care advocate, Ms. Ara Fernando. She's going to talk about pampering and other methods of self-care for artists. On March 27, Saturday at 3 p.m., we have storytelling, promoting theater in a post-pandemic environment with advertising and communications maverick, Mr. Adi Peña, and social media and communications expert, Ms. Julia Enriquez. And we have more sessions lined up for you on April. They're curated and produced for you, so please check our Facebook page for updates. All right, so this webinar series is entirely online and free and open to the public as part of Benilde's fundraising collaboration with DLSP Philippines Kada Uno on the project BARKada Uno, Benilde Artists Rising, #Bangon Artista. It's an online fundraising event that seeks to assist the most vulnerable members of the arts and cultural sector. So please donate what you can. We appreciate all the help that you can provide. As we end this webinar episode, allow me to thank those who have helped in making this series possible. The School of Design and Arts, headed by our Dean, Architect Dottie Acela Domingo. The Benilde Arts and Culture Cluster, headed by Associate Dean Magdalena De Leon. Our faculty in the Theater Arts program. Benilde's Culture and Arts Unit, with Ms. Louise Diane Estrella as OIC Director. And of course, our media and communications partners, Cultural Promotions Team, headed by Ms. Julia Enriquez. We would like to thank the invaluable efforts of our OJTs from the Theater Arts and Production Design programs. Thank you, guys. And of course, Benilde School of Deaf Education and Applied Studies for providing our interpreters for today's webinar. So we have Ms. Joy and Ms. Dea. Thank you very much. Again, everyone, we thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Have a great day.